Well, my take is that yes, there is the talk about tightening, but look, they published the CPI index for January, and it was over 7%. And people in the know, they will all tell you that the cost of living increases in the US are between approximately 7 to 15%, depending on the household and depending on where you live. And now the Fed is talking about increasing interest rates this year, say 4 times or 5 times, and the maximum they will do it is to go to say 1.5%. So if you have inflation at 7% and the interest rate is 1.5%, I can tell you this is not monetary tightening. It is relative tightening. But as they talk about inflation every day, the Fed members, of course, academics that don't go and shop like ordinary people do, they continue to buy assets. In other words, to expand the central bank's balance sheet is inflationary. And not just in the US, globally they do that. Sure. Especially this genius Lagarde at the ECB in Europe.
So Mark, let me ask you this. Do you think they should do more? Do you think the Fed should increase rates faster? Or are you just saying that they're so far behind the curve taking action that it is what it is?
My view is in economics, the government should stay out and just have the global framework and the legal system and not intervene. The Federal Reserve is a manipulator of markets. They claim that they stabilize market. No, they destabilize markets. They've always done that for the last 40 years. They printed money. They should have increased interest rates much earlier, but they didn't do that. And now it's not the perfect time to do it. But because of the ill-conceived policies and their failed interventions, the Fed is now blocked into 2 scenarios where in one, they increase rates, the economy will plunge right away badly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you, Mark. I completely agree with you on that. I think the Fed has mismanaged the situation entirely. The last time, though, they did a 50 basis point move was in 1999 before the big dot-com collapse. And so they couldn't get ahead of asset price inflation, obviously. But today inflation is the worst it's been since 1982. It's probably more than 15% because the CPI doesn't include things like healthcare, energy, or food expenses. So it's completely contrived. And so you and I know the numbers are much higher. But the real issue today facing retirees and our viewers is what's going on in the markets with all of these mood swings that have been dictated by the Fed's actions. In the last 3 months, they have literally ruined the stock market forward momentum. They've ruined the market party, so to speak. And so we are expecting a 50 basis point move in March from the Fed, which they haven't done since 1999. Give me your idea on what that move should be. Is 50 basis points correct, or should they make it higher or lower?
I want to answer the question this way. If you have inflation at the current rate, and the last time it happened, as you correctly pointed out, in 1982, the Fed fund rate in 82 was at 15%, 15. And the Fed nowadays, they are wokes. This is the culture of wokeism. They're not central bankers, they're money printers, apprentices. Yeah, I tell you, interest rates, in my view, should be minimum 7%.
Yeah, And the struggle is that's the behind the curve comment. They're so far behind. How do they get from here to 7? And that's where one of the biggest risks to the economy could be a Fed mistake, a Fed not tightening enough, a Fed tightening too much. Do you think right now the biggest risk to the economy in the United States is a Fed misstep, or do you think there's potentially a bigger risk to the economy here?
They've made mistakes for the last 20 years.
Yeah, I know.
They created
longer than 20
view
years,
of
Mark.
the Fed. I want to explain to you very clearly.
Yeah.
The view of the Fed was you print money, you boost asset prices. This is interventionism. And because asset prices go up, consumption will go up. Yes, consumption did go up, but the trade deficit of the US is at the record high. They print money in the US and the production is somewhere else in the world.
Well, sure, that all of that money printing, benefits all of the emerging markets like China, because we buy things that they import to our country, and so that's pretty much, we're globalizing the Fed in that sense. But you're right about that. But it doesn't change the fact that we're in a rising rate environment, and it's very scary for people who are retired or retiring at this time. And so what insight or advice would you have for our viewers in that regard in this kind of environment, Mark? What would you tell them?
I want to tell them what I do because I'm also an elderly gentleman. I may look very young, but I'm also over 70. And I still work, but in theory, I could be a retiree. So I look at the world this way. The more the government is planning, and we have in the world nowadays, the leftists, these are people who are on the left. All these people, they want government interventions. They don't want to take any personal responsibilities. They want the government to give you this. They want the government to give you that. If the government says you have to get vaccinated, they all say, oh, wonderful, we'll do that. And so we have a system which is very uncapitalistic, where the government manipulates more and more the economy and your personal life, as we know, as it has happened. And in this environment, I want to tell you, it's very difficult to plan anything, because the government, if they could tell small shop owners and independent businessmen, you must shut down your business, you can't go out anymore, and so forth, they can do anything with you.
Yeah.
There's no resistance to speak of except the truckers. But then the government says, okay, we close the accounts of people that give money to the truckers in Canada, and so forth. So in this environment, planning is very difficult. If I were an American, I would go and move in the countryside, in the South, far away from socialists, far away from San Francisco, Los Angeles, California, New York, Chicago. These are all woke cities. They are dangerous. People move out because the criminality has gone up. Who is responsible for the criminality? The defund the police people.